Good morning to you. Good morning to you. Good good morning. Won't you share with a friend or two? Good morning to you. You. Good morning, good morning to you. You. Good good morning to you. And many more. Good morning, and welcome to Daring Dialogues. I am your host, Shantae Charles. I hope that you've been having a great and wonderful day so far. I will admit that I am not feeling quite at my best, so we are going to do a short show today just so I can make sure that I am taking care of myself and checking in on my personal health. All right, it is October 21st and it is Monday Motivation. For those of you who are here with us for the first time, just want to reiterate that Monday through Friday, we cover a variety of topics. So, Monday, we usually try to cover something that's motivational or something that's just in the news and necessary for us to talk about. Teachable Tuesday, Black Table Talk is where we cover all things Black, Black history, Black polity, etc. Wednesday is where we focus on relationships, and right now we're reading two books about setting boundaries for yourself and also setting boundaries when you have a dysfunctional family. On Thursdays, we have Thinking Thursday, Theology Thursday, and right now we're reading a book on forgiveness and really diving into the nuances of forgiveness and what it means to forgive. And then Friday is Get Free Friday. And right now we are focusing in on the writings of Tina Turner and also, again, looking at what may be in the news, what may be some current events, things we want to know about going into the weekend. Now, if you are a person of faith, we also invite you to join us on Sundays at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where we have our Sunday dialogue. It is a series of messages that are faith-based and inspiring from the lens of Christianity. All right. So let's dive into today's inspiring word. This is coming from Dennis Kimbrough, Think and Grow Rich, A Black Choice, Daily Motivations for African American Success. And the quote today here comes from Bryant Gumbel, which thankfully he is still alive and he recently had a birthday, I believe. Bryant Gumbel, morning news host, quotes, "You never know which key unlocks the safe." The Today Show. Success can be achieved only by those willing to persevere beyond the point where the majority stop and turn back. Few of us realize how long it takes in the early days to succeed in an extraordinary way. There are difficult steps to be taken. A story is told of a scuba diver and a fortune hunter who spent 14 years searching for a sunken Spanish galleon off the Florida Keys. Each day, the crew kept looking for this elusive ship. Many wondered if they would ever find it or if the ship was even there. The captain of the expedition had a motto that kept the crew inspired. Today's the day. He had t-shirts and signs printed bearing that maxim. Then one day, today was the day. The crew found the sunken treasure, turning each crew member into a multimillionaire instantly in the process. Anita Baker, the talented female vocalist, was turned down by numerous record companies and reduced to tears before she signed on with Elektra Records. But today is her day. Film producer Matty Rich made more than 100 presentations to potential investors before he secured the funding to produce his first movie, Straight Outta Brooklyn. But today is his day. And dancer and choreographer Judith Jamison began her quest for the bright lights when she was just 6 years old. Many days she danced on aching legs and bleeding feet, but today is her day. Today she is labeled America's premier dancer, and we know that she went on to lead Alvin Ailey's company. Today is your day. Today is the day for you to take another step closer to your goal. Often it is just a single step that makes the difference. Today and every day, I will continue to step toward my goal. What is it that is your goal today? I want you to think about that. Take a moment and think about what is my what is my personal goal for my life? What is my personal goal in the things that I want to do and share? Think about it. To inspire you today, I've chosen Volume 2 of the Black History flashcards, all on women. I highly recommend this flashcard set. He's got several of them. I think I have bought all his flashcards up into his most recent sets, but they come in volumes. This particular volume is on women, and it's 52 cards of women from throughout history that you can find facts on. So let me tell you about the four women that I've chosen today. The first one is Toni Morrison. Now, at the time of this printing, Toni Morrison was still alive. We know she is no longer alive. Let's look at some things that happened in Toni Morrison's life and career. She was an award winning professor, editor, and novelist. She was the first African American woman to receive the Nobel Prize in Literature, which she details in a documentary that's out, I think, on either Amazon or Netflix. She was the recipient of many awards, including the Pulitzer Prize, the NAACP Image Award, and the Presidential Medal of Freedom. She wrote many novels with strong African American characters striving to survive in a male dominated world as the focal points. She penned the award winning novel Beloved, based on the life of a runaway enslaved person who killed her daughter rather than have her returned to slavery. Morrison's Beloved ranks 26th on the American Library Association list of most banned and challenged books because of its thought provoking content. Which, if you look at her documentary, she actually details how it was based on a true story that she had come across in her research. And she took that true story and then began to form a story, a fictional story based on the true story out of it. So that is Toni Morrison. Now, this is another young lady who has recently had a birthday, Ruby Bridges. She was born September 8th, 1954, and we know that Ruby Bridges is still living. So, what has gone on in Ruby Bridges' life since we last saw her in this photo, where she is being protected by the federal government because her state government is refusing to protect her? So, what do we know about Ruby Bridges? She was and is a civil rights activist and author, probably one of the youngest ones of her generation. She was the first black child to desegregate an all-white elementary school in New Orleans in 1960. She and her family suffered cruel threats and mistreatment by protesters and community members who were against desegregation. She served as the head of the Ruby Bridges Foundation, formed in 1999 to promote tolerance and respect of all people regardless of race. Bridges' struggle has been portrayed in many works, including the 1998 TV special Ruby Bridges and her own book, Through My Eyes. She also released a children's book as well. She is the recipient of the Presidential Citizens Medal and an honorary degree from Tulane University. We know that Ruby Bridges had much difficulty during this time, but she has gone on to do great things. I hope she inspires you to do the same. Wilma Rudolph. Some people are familiar with her, but if you're not, let me introduce you. Wilma Rudolph passed away November 12th, 1994. She was a track star, an Olympic champion, and an educator. Wilma contracted polio at the age of 4 and lost the use of her left leg, but eventually regained her strength thanks to her family's dedication to providing massage therapy at home. She refused to let her disability stop her and became the first American woman to win 3 gold medals in track and field during the 1960 Summer Olympic Games in Rome. She refused to participate in the 1964 Olympic Games because she felt she could not match her 1960 success. She retired in 1963 and became a school teacher and a coach after finishing her college degree in education. Can you imagine having Wilma Rudolph as your teacher? I wonder if any of her students are alive to tell that story. And finally, another author, Zora Neale Hurston. Zora Neale Hurston passed away January 28th, 1960. Man, what a time to have been alive. I wasn't even born yet. But we know about Zora because of her wonderful works of literature. Zora was an author, a folklorist, and anthropologist. She did many studies on the Caribbean, on the black community, on the Gullah Geechee, on hoodoo, on voodoo, and I do have copies of her work where she detailed her studies in those. She spent her early years studying the collecting folklore throughout the South and the Caribbean as she worked to record the stories and tales of many cultures, particularly African American. Her 1920s Harlem apartment was a hot spot for social gatherings during the Harlem Renaissance. She worked with famous poet Langston Hughes on a play and penned several more plays during her lifetime. Houston wrote her most famous novel, which I was introduced to in high school. Today, that novel is probably on the banned books list. Um, but her most famous novel, Their Eyes Were Watching God, she wrote it while studying practices of voodoo in Haiti. Author Alice Walker helped to revive Zora Neale Hurston's writings in 1975, 15 years after Hurston died poor and was buried in an unmarked grave. These days, her grave has been marked and she is now celebrated and honored. But yeah, Zora Neale Hurston. What was the legacy that she left behind? She left behind documentation, not only of the practices of hoodoo, the Haitian perspective of the practices of voodoo, but she also left behind documentation of, I think his name is, I want to say Cujo, I could be wrong, but she left behind documentations of the last living, I think, enslaved persons um, from the Clotilda, whose descendants are still alive in Africatown. And recently, they have been releasing her work on those documented people who were formerly enslaved, who, if you know this, what happened with the Clotilda, because they've done some documentaries recently that I watched, where after the slave trade had been made illegal, well, international slave trade had been made illegal, this one guy he did it on a bet to see if he could go and smuggle in more enslaved persons after the ending of the slave trade, way after the ending of the slave trade. And he wound up doing that. And he tried to burn the boat and destroy the boat, but parts of that boat have been exhumed. Most of it, that is, the wreckage of it, is still underwater. I think they decided to leave the rest of it down there because it was disintegrating, and so they wanted to kind of, preserve it, almost like what's going on with the Titanic. But pieces of it have been brought up, and they have, begun to do the process of creating a museum around those artifacts and things that were brought up. Her work is so important, but she never published it. So because somebody else took the reins, right? Somebody else was able to gather her writings, because some of her writings were being trashed, they were being thrown out, they're being destroyed. Somebody was able to gather her writings and was able to present those writings of things she had documented. And so I would say within the last 5 or 6 years, those writings have come out. So if you look up Clotilda, and books on the Clotilda, you will see those works. I do have one of them, but it's downstairs, so I don't want to grab it right now. But I think it's very interesting to note that even with us here that are living, sometimes we don't know how far our writing is going to go. We don't know how far our documentation is going to go. We don't know how far our little photographs are going to go that we take every single day, or our short videos that we're doing, that we're documenting our lives. And somebody 25, 50, 75, 100 years from now could be looking at your documentation of your daily life to figure out what life was like in the 2020s, in the 2000s. So I try to always keep that in mind when I am writing, or when I'm sharing something online, or when I'm shooting a short video. I try to keep that in mind, that my life and my documentation of it may serve the future in some way, shape, or form. We never know. That's what I wanted to share with you today. The last thing I want to talk about as I begin to wrap it up here is I want to talk about people who have never seen a ballot, or people who have never voted before. I want to show you, because if you are a registered voter, you should be getting a sample ballot in the mail before election starts, or election day. Our sample ballot came this past weekend, because this week for us in the state of Maryland begins early voting. And I want to show you the parts of a sample ballot, meaning this is what your official ballot is going to look like. The pieces you will get when you get to the polling site, or you can vote by mail. Some places allow you to do that. Some states allow you to do that. But you get lots of instructions about what's going to be on the ballot. And so for people who have never voted, or who've never seen a ballot before, I'm sharing this in the hopes that you will take the time to register to vote. For some places, it's still not too late to register to vote. Okay? So one of the pages they give us is this, and it tells you how to vote for a write-in candidate. It tells you how to do it on paper, on the ballot, how to write in qualified write-in candidates as of September 18th, 2024. And so when people say, we only have two choices, we only have the option of voting Republican or Democrat, guys, that's just not true, okay? It really is not. It's just not true. Do you see how many people are running for the office of president, or the office of vice president? You even have somebody that's a write-in candidate that's running as a U.S. senator. Okay? So, when people say we only have between the two choices, it's just not true. These are all the write-in candidates that are qualified. And then, again, I have enough time that if I want to go and look up these other candidates and what their platforms are, and if they have a viable platform, I could go and look them up if I wanted to. So let's dispel this myth that there's only two possible options on a ballot. All right? So this is the state of Maryland, Baltimore County. This is the first page of my ballot. And I'm doing this because, again, I want people to understand that when you get online and you complain and complain and complain, but you don't participate in the process that makes things better in your community, that is a whole issue. We can march, we can yell, we can cry, we can scream. People have defaced property, burned stuff down, all of that stuff. But if you're not participating in this part of the process, you are doing yourself a disfavor, a disservice. All right? So let's look at this particular page, okay? What does it say? You've got President and Vice President of the United States, and you've got Harris and Walz, you've got Trump and Vance, you've got Oliver and Maat, that's libertarians, You've got Stein and Ware, that's the Green Party. We still have Robert F. Kennedy and Shanahan unaffiliated still on our ballot, our sample ballot. Okay? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 potential choices, plus the whole list of possible qualified write-in candidates. Okay? Now, here's some important parts that I think people for some reason do not realize is on their ballot besides the presidential race. Judge of the circuit court. Yeah, you're voting for judges. Vote for up to 4. Justice of the Supreme Court. Pretty important. Look at this. Yes or no for continuance in office. Do you want them to continue in office? Well, I got their name. I can go look them up. I can go see if there are any controversial cases or anything on them. Have they been in the news for any kind of corruption, etc.? So I can make an informed choice. And then I can vote yes, they should continue in office, or no, they should not. Okay? Appellate courts. Should they continue in office? Oh, but it gets better. Let's turn over. More judges. Judge of the appellate court. Judge of the appellate court. And here we go. Question number 1. Constitutional amendment. Declaration of rights. Right to reproductive freedom. Oh, you mean to tell me that's on the ballot? That's where I get to decide whether or not women should have rights to reproductive freedom? So the people telling me not to vote are essentially leaving me out of the process as to whether or not my state is going to have women with lesser rights to reproductive freedom? Okay? That's an amendment. I need to read it over, make sure I understand it, and then I need to vote. Am I for the constitutional amendment or am I against it? Are they trying to add something to the amendment? Are they trying to take something out of our Constitution? Charter amendment. Look at this. You mean to tell me I get to vote on whether we increase our county council of members? But wait, if you're not voting, you're not registered to vote, you have no say that your county council got expanded because you haven't registered to vote. Charter amendment, Office of the Inspector General. Charter amendment, Planning Board term limits. You mean to tell me I can vote whether or not people in my community have term limits to be on the board so that they don't stay there longer than they actually should and hinder and impede progress in my community? What? County ordinances. Refuse disposal borrowing. In other words, can we use $5 million for disposable projects, construction, reconstruction, improving, enlarging, altering, repairing, modernizing county disposal facilities? Oh, you mean tell me I get to vote on that? I get to vote whether you get to use my tax dollars to do that. County ordinance, community college borrowing. Can we borrow $18.5 million of your tax money for college projects? Oh, public works borrowing. Can we borrow $55 million? Can we use that much in this next fiscal year to improve your streets, your highways, your bridges, storm drainage? Can we do that? Oh, you mean tell me I get a say in how raggedy and shabby my streets look? Parks preservation and greenways borrowing. Can we borrow $8 million to preserve our parks and our greenways? School borrowing. Can we borrow $331 million for school buildings and site projects? $331 million. So when you sit out voting, you are in fact sitting out making progress in your own community. And I'm bringing you the proof because for some reason, people don't believe that they're sitting out all of these ways in which you make choices to benefit your community. Oh, and it doesn't stop there. There's a whole other page. Okay? Agricultural and rural land preservation, waterway improvement, community improvement project borrowing, operational buildings borrowing. All of this is on the ballot. Okay? So for people who have never seen a ballot, to be telling you not to vote is insane. For people who have never participated in the voting process, telling you that it's fake, that you don't need to participate, that you can sit this one out, that you can stay home, is insane. Okay? It is. Because rather than yelling and shouting and screaming, because you want to see improvement happen in your community, this is where you should be yelling, shouting, and screaming on your ballot. And you should be gathering like-minded citizens to make sure your voices is heard by voting correctly so that progress can happen in your community. So these days when I drive by my streets and I see construction happening and I see my streets, I'm a little inconvenienced in traffic because they're working on our streets, improving our waterway, repairing our bridges, making sure our water is clean. I don't mind the inconvenience. Why? Because I know I voted for it. I voted to be inconvenienced so that improvements can be made in my community. All right. I hope that I have said something that was inspiring today and encouraging. Remember, light is the most daring opposition to darkness, so continue to go out and be light. And one of the best ways to be light in this season is to get yourself registered to vote and vote in your community. Make a difference, all right? Thank you all so much for your time and attention. Take care, be well, and most importantly, be light. All right, I've got about 5 minutes